OSSREA was among the grantees, the 11 grantees in Africa that were awarded a grant to conduct this research. We formed a cohort of youth and youth vulnerability to violent extremism, YOVEX platform. And this YOVEX platform was hosted by IDRC Department of Governance and Social Justice. The program head there is Dr. Martha Mutisi, who has worked along with us throughout and supported us a lot. We have learned a lot. There has been a lot of capacity building on our part as an institution, on our part as the quartet members, the partners whom we have worked with, the respondents, the stakeholders, the governments of Kenya and Uganda, IGAD, especially C1 IGAD, who are our immediate partners. And we also worked with PeaceNet initially, but later on we got other partners whom we continued working with in this particular research. So it has been a very good time. We have enjoyed the partnership and strengthened our institutions and learned from each other, and learned also some things that we didn't know. And I am very happy as we come to the close of it that we are still celebrating our achievements, and we have learned from the challenges that we have had. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fena. Now I will invite Ms. Tigist Hailu, Mr. Campus has brief remarks on that. Can you please mute your mics?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tigist, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Alamu. I see I'm amongst friends. I see the setting is a bit relaxed for me now because I recognize a lot of faces. So I can be a bit informal. I have a few notes in front of me. Esteemed colleagues, representatives of OSSREA, Dr. Trufena and other colleagues, representatives of IDRC, all participants, colleagues, good morning. My name is Tigist Hailu. I come from IGAD's Conflict Early Warning and Response Mechanism. I work there as a Public Relations and Communications Officer. And today I'm here on behalf of the C1 Director, Mr. Kamla Somogo, who was supposed to have joined this morning, but was not able to. And he sends his apologies. He also asked me to convey his a lot of gratitude to OSSREA for hosting this very timely and pertinent policy dialogue, and also recognize the partners, particularly the lead partner IDRC, which has made this research undertaking possible, and those who have, everybody who has supported it. From the side of C1, we're very much delighted to be seen as partners in this very important project. I just want to convey a few points why this webinar, and particularly its team, we find it extremely useful in our work of promotion of peace and security in our region, and how C1 sees itself positioned in this initiative. As most of you know, C1 is IGAD's Conflict Early Warning and Response Mechanism. Our role is very simple. We are supposed to be providing critical support to the leaders in our region to enable them take early action to prevent and mitigate violent conflicts in the region. And given what we know about this region, I'm sure you all appreciate this is a massive task, almost an impossible task to be undertaking as a single entity. But the way C1 has been designed from the get-go is for it to be a platform. Really, its intergovernmental nature also enables it to do that effectively. So we're designed in a way that we consistently and in a very robust manner work in partnership with governmental and non-governmental institutions across the region at all levels. We engage, governmental and non-governmental bodies, namely civil society institutions, and all entities with peace and security and development mandate in all our work related to data collection, analysis, research, engagement with decision makers in the region, and supporting response initiatives. And I may want to also remind us that C1's focus initially from its inception in 2002 up to 2012 was relatively narrower. We focused on inter-communal violent conflicts along borders, but our mandate has grown to be much more robust. We currently monitor issues of peace and security across 5 very broad sectors that cover human activity. So we look at security sector, environment, governance, economy, and social affairs. And we systematically monitor developments in each sector that we believe lead to violent conflict and provide early warning accordingly. I'm giving you this background to probably help some colleagues who may not be very familiar with C1's mandate to appreciate how we come in this partnership. So in this light, C1 considers its partnership with OSSREA extremely invaluable. As you know, OSSREA has a big name in terms of undertaking wide-ranging research in our region and beyond. So we have collaborated with them on many projects and continue to do so. Most recently, we have developed a regional policy framework on informal cross-border trade and cross-border security governance alongside other partners. And secondly, I wish to appreciate the rigorous nature of the research project. I think Dr. Trufena described how extensive it's been. And we appreciate that particularly because C1's work typically on a day-to-day basis is focused more on short-term prevention, or what we working in the sector of conflict prevention refer to as operational prevention, which means most of our conflict prevention work focuses on forestalling violence, which is at the very verge of breaking out, or mostly those who have already broken out. But we try to maybe help to take preventive action that reduces escalation and spread. Okay, somebody has.
Please mute your mics, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. So I was saying, in line with continental and global trends, we understand the need for our work to also extend beyond, this short-term crisis management posture towards more, strategic, long-term prevention, whereby we use this vast amount of data, insight, research that we have access to help our governments use very, very strong, nuanced, field-based analysis and insights to inform long-term governmental planning, decision-making, which we believe will address structural factors of insecurity in the region, and thereby tangibly improve human conditions and so on and so forth. So instead of crisis management, we want to extend these efforts to be more strategic in terms of reducing the risk of violence and insecurity from ever breaking out. So I think research like the one OSSREA has just completed, in which we're happy to be identified with, brings out a lot of hard evidence in terms of what are the trends of violent extremism in the region, what has been the role of the youth, and what would, most effective preventive and countering intervention of violent extremism that is youth inclusive, what should it look like? So we're even more, there's a lot of convergence of interest with our mandate. And lastly, and perhaps without preempting much of the presentations today, I think the theme of today's policy dialogue is, of utmost pertinence to C1, and I'm sure many institutions represented today working on human security and development issues in the IGAD region, as we all recognize the demographic realities in Africa, which also apply for our region. Our region is a youthful region as part of the continental trends, and if according to current UN data, if you were to consider all citizens below the age of 35 as youth, you'd have a staggering 3/4 of the population of Africa can be identified as youth. And for this reason, the critical agency of youth in all matters of peace and security and development concerns is undisputed. In fact, instead of talking about inclusion, we need to probably move towards making youth the front and center of all conversations on human security and development in our region. But however, we all know the realities. Our member states are inadequately equipped to harness this demographic advantage of having a youthful population. Often youth are pushed to the margins and left vulnerable to be co-opted in criminal and violent activity. And lastly, I also wanted to maybe reiterate that C1 also considers violent extremism as one of IGAD's key security challenges. We monitor a number of key indicators related to violent extremism activity in the region, including trends in radicalization and indoctrination, trends related to intolerance, incitement, and also government response, which I think is very much looked at in the research. So we're keen to learn much from today's engagement, especially given the very interesting mix of participants, youth from the two countries considered and other critical stakeholders. So we very much look forward to taking part in the discussions and learning from it. And with those few words, I want to once again thank OSSREA for hosting this very pertinent policy dialogue, as well as IDRC and other partners who have supported it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tigist, for a very elaborate presentation. Now, in the agenda item, the next item is a presentation by Professor Sunday on the research journey. So the floor is yours, Prof.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me put the presentation on the shared screen so that we walk the journey together. Okay, once again, thank you so much. As I told you, I was in this project as the PI when I was still in the university before joining C1. Right now, I work as conflict analyst for C1. And the project started quite intensively, but with a lot of caution as well. So I will walk through the presentation and make sure you understand where we came from, what we experienced along the way, and where we are today as we are ending the project. So I would say actually the project was for 3 years, but then it took us a while because of many other factors. Until today, the project has ended. It was supposed to end in 2019, but we had to extend a few things because of certain difficulties that we were meeting along the way. So basically, as you see, 2016 to 2020 sounds like 4 years, but the project was for 3 years. First, this project started with the proposal itself, which was written by OSSREA. And this proposal took a number of processes. It was not the usual proposal that you submit and then you just wait for the approval and you start your project. However, the project proposal took twists and turns in terms of the realization of the activities to be done and understanding the nature of IDRC, how IDRC works, and under what program IDRC actually has given this funding, and then the expectation, the nature of the project itself. So we had to go in different meetings in Nairobi to look at everybody's proposal from the different cohorts who were selected. And this took us quite a long time. And there was rigorous training and workshop from IDRC. We also happened to meet several cohort groups, and I hear my brother from Zimbabwe is here. And it was a universal kind of training from all over Africa that brought people also from French-speaking and Arab-speaking countries in this. Once we completed our project proposal and it was approved by IDRC, there were conditions that these funding needs a tripartite arrangements with civil society organizations and policymakers. So there was need to look at this project proposal from the bottom up and top down, and harvesting knowledge from the community, from the youth who are in the different areas, urban, rural, and so forth. So there was need for OSSREA to partner with C1 IGAD, and it was represented by Moses Okello, as I mentioned, and then the civil society organization that was already established in Kenya, PeaceNet. And PeaceNet also appointed and started working with Lina Zediga, who is here with us, in Uganda, so that we have a civil society lens in both countries that we had selected for this research, Uganda and Kenya. And I think Trofina will tell you why we selected only Uganda and Kenya and not any other countries like Ethiopia, Somalia, which has a lot of issues of violent extremism. I think she will tell us later. And then when these processes were completed, there was now need to engage with governments and obtain research permits because we would be doing this research with the community, in schools, with civil society organizations, with policymakers, traditional leaders, religious leaders, members of parliament, across the board. So you cannot do this kind of research without seeking for permits. And we had to seek permit from Uganda and also from Kenya, which were granted to allow us to start conducting this research. We got the research permits from both countries, and once we were granted, we realized that there was a need to understand where, in which this area we are venturing into. It was not a normal kind of research, social science research, that one would just go into the community and design questionnaires and begin talking to people. This is about violent extremism. This is about terrorism. This is about sensitive issues that all the governments in the IGAD region take them very seriously. This is about youth who are very fragile, and if misinformed, they can be they can go in any direction. So there was need for us to be trained on research methods in collecting data related to violent extremism in Kenya and Uganda among the youth and other organizations. Very difficult. We thought we would just go and start collecting data, but that was not the case. Governments also advised us to be very careful in framing questions to be asked in the process. And this was, we had a training then from the 10th April up to 15th April in Mombasa. And it shocked us a lot that whatever we thought we knew, Dr. Trofina knows about research. I also know quite a lot about research, but this particular one was very specific for this project, and it was very helpful. Once we finished this training on research methods, we asked the governments of Kenya and Uganda so that we present the way in which we want to start collecting our data. And we presented this Inception workshop report to the government of Kenya on 16th of March 2017 in Nairobi. It was endorsed, and Selina, really thank you so much for this, plus other officials who were there. We became confident that this research was taking a good journey. And then again, we also did the same thing in Uganda on the 29th May in Kampala. We had this Inception report, people from President's office, Prime Minister's office, from the security, and also from civil society organizations, human rights groups, youth, universities, they came and attended. So we were given the go-ahead to continue conducting this research. After the Inception report, workshop were done, we started now programming our trip, our baseline studies, going into the field. And we started with Kenya. Why? Because we were informed during the Inception meeting that Kenya would be going for election, and we may not need to wait for too long because our data would be contaminated with political issues in Kenya. So we were asked to quickly conduct the baseline study in Kenya first and then go to Uganda after that. We had several sites that we, in our Inception thinking, that we wanted to visit, including Western Kenya, the Western province, because there were several issues we were hearing also coming from that end. However, we conducted the baseline study in Nairobi, informal settlements. Most of the areas in the informal settlements we visited personally. Babadogo, I don't remember some of the names, Dam site area, all those areas we visited them. And then we went to Garissa, where we stayed in Garissa and visited several places, including the university that was bombed and several students were killed. And we talked to quite a number of people, including women organizations and university professors who were there and witnessed the incidents of the bombing of the university. We witnessed quite a number of other organizations like the churches and the mosques, quite a varied understanding, quite a very elaborate findings were done, and Trofina will talk to you about that. And then we went to Mombasa and visited quite a number of areas, Kilifi and my sister here, women organizations. We visited and we stayed in Mombasa for nearly 10 days. And then from 5th to 15th of June, we went to conduct these same baseline studies in Uganda. We started with Kampala. Then in Kampala, we visited quite a number of sites within Kampala and the outskirts of Kampala, including university, Makerere universities, and other academic institutions. And we went to Mayuge, and we were advised during the Inception workshop that some of these sites we may need to visit. So they were the ones who decided that go to Mayuge. We were also told to go to Arua and also to go to Kasese. At the time was really tumult, really unstable, but later we were told, no, you cannot go to Kasese because of insecurity. We could not go to southwestern Uganda, like Igezi, because of the funding, and the size of the funding was reduced. So then after Mayuge, we traveled to Gulu, where we conducted these baseline studies, and we met the LC5 chair who is here, Mr. Mapenduzi. We met the traditional leader, the paramount chief of Acholi. We met the DISO, the RDC. We met a number of people, civil society organizations. We met women, returnees from LRA. We met elders. We met the bishops. And then we also went to Kitgum. When we say Gulu, Gulu is the provincial headquarters, but now it is a city. It is the headquarters of regional towns. So we went to Kitgum and also met women councillors, youth councillors within the district. We met the LC5. We met also the civil society organizations in Kitgum. And we collected data from these baseline studies. Then we came back. To look at what we have done. We put all those things together, and we realized that this field research that we have conducted in Uganda and Kenya needs validation. So from towards late 2018 to 2019, we had to go back with our data that we had collected. We put them together, we transcribed them, we had a report. So we conducted field research validation. And we went exactly to the same sites in Kenya where we collected the information from and presented this data to them so that they look at it and say, yes, this is what we said. So we were in Garissa also again and presented to them. We were in Mombasa, we presented to them. And then again, we went to Uganda, we presented this information in Mayuge, in Kampala, and Gulu. And it was highly received. And the same people we met during the baseline studies are the same people also who were invited to come and listen to what we had collected and written and brought back to them to endorse, to validate. Now, the validation workshops, I think I'm repeating myself here. After the validation workshops, we held a very big conference, and this conference was now meant to bring policymakers at the regional level so that we disseminate some of the research findings based on what we collected and also broaden the information that we collected to the wider stakeholders in the IGAD region. So quite a number of people at different levels were invited in Nairobi, and we held this regional conference in April 2019. In the project proposal, there was also need that we should include a TOT in the process of collecting data. A manual should be developed to allow youth to be trained in countering and preventing violent extremism. And that should be part and parcel of the inclusiveness and the nature of how youth can be included in preventing and countering violent extremism. So we organized a training of trainers in Nairobi on the 8th to 10th and brought a number of youth in that workshop, and they were trained. And then also in Garissa, we did the same thing from 12 to 14, 2019, and then in Mombasa, 16th to 18th, 2019. I must say that in Mombasa, we really got a lot of help from Marwa. I think he's not invited, but he must have left already. He left Mombasa and he got promotion. He probably is in Nairobi, but we got a lot of assistance from him. And this TOT in Kenya became very important for the youth also to begin to understand what they had been missing. And again, we did that in Uganda. The same thing in Uganda in June. We were in Mayuge. We started with Mayuge from 13th to 15th, and we were there. And then in Gulu, we requested the LC5 to organize and receive us, and it did. In June 17th to 19th, we had this training of trainers. And then in August 13th to 15th, we conducted this in Kampala. It delayed a little bit in Kampala because we had to come back and do other things, but we went back and conducted also a OT for Kampala. And after that, we decided that we should have some form of workshop in terms of projecting a learning alliance. And this learning alliance was primarily designed by OSSREA, and Alemo, thank you so much for being in the center of this. So we had to have a workshop based on learning alliance and making sure that the areas we visited all benefit from the learning process and the documentation of the learning, and how to link this information with other stakeholders, women, farmers, school children and youth, and quite a number of things that needed to be done together. In this process, one of the things that I can talk out of this presentation is that when we were in Mayuge, we realized that the youth were actually very much vulnerable. We were even presented with a young boy who was rescued from the ADF at the border of Congo by the security officials, and they brought them to the DPC's office, Mr. Odoch, at the time, and told us we intercepted this boy who had disappeared almost for 4 years from the family, and we found him at the border. They were crossing with him to Congo. Now we are reuniting him with his family. If you want, you can come with us. But we were advised to stay in Mayuge town and get information rather from the security personnel. So the youth were very much redundant, and we started an academy. Personally, I took my responsibility as somebody who got touched, and I bought boots, I bought uniforms and balls, footballs, and we requested the official to be part and parcel of the youth. So we started a football academy in Mayuge, and Lena has been supervising them. And they decided to call that academy PCVE Mayuge Football Club. And this is very nice. So this is part of the process of the learning that we discovered these youth are very redundant. Mayuge is one of the highest populated area in Uganda, with an average birth of less than 25-year-old lady or less than 28-year-old lady with 6 children and with polygamous backgrounds. So Mayuge was very specific. However, the Learning Alliance also was done in Mombasa, in Kenya. We found that those areas were very important. We found quite a number of majority of the women were the ones being recruited in joining violent extremism. That was very shocking for us. Over 75% of those who were joining Al-Shabaab were young women, and majority of them, some of them were actually single mothers. And they would do everything to protect their husbands, who probably have children with them. So we had to take this Learning Alliance to Mombasa on 16 September. And then there were several other activities that OSSREA and IDRC wanted us to attend. These are cohort activities. As I mentioned in the beginning, there were several other cohorts, like we have one in Harare, and my brother is here with us. Others were also in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and other areas. So there was need for us to attend some of these conferences organized by the other cohorts. So Trofena and Alemo, they traveled to Tanzania and they attended this UDSM conference. And then also traveled, myself, Trofena, we traveled to Zimbabwe to attend a workshop on manual development, the one I have mentioned, so that there could be manuals for training of trainers, and also the trainers of trainers can train other people at the local level. Again, out of that, we needed to present a number of publications and products. I must say this is not exhaustive enough. We have done quite a number of products. We have published the baseline report and submitted to IDRC, plus other stakeholders who have requested, both from Kenya and Uganda. The PCVE manual was developed. We have them, and it was disseminated. We have journals, and one or two of the journals which I still have here with me that will come out next week is just one of them, but there are several journals we published, and policy briefs. I still have one more to submit. It will be in the course of next week. Then there were several communication products that were developed. And thanks Salem again, because most of these newsletters, the website, the social media, where people were being updated, even when we are in workshops, even when we are in the field, when we have produced something, certain products, it will all be on the website, and social media postings have been very great. There are several infographics, so many actually, so many videos. Some of the videos, myself and Trofina, we recorded, and they're there. You can listen to them. We talked on that, and it is a video that is part and parcel of the product. And some of them have been uploaded on YouTube. 2 books are being published. One has already been published by Trofina for Kenya. The other is for Uganda. We are now reviewing the last section of it, and this book is coming, particularly for Ugandan officials in Gulu, Mapenduzi. You'll get this book. Lina, you'll get this book. You know it already. Also from Mayuge, Bongo really is interested. And then officially the government of Uganda is awaiting this book in order to come up with a Ugandan policy on violent extremism, which has taken a long, long time. And some of the products we had already given to them for them to start drafting the Ugandan policy on PCVE. And then we have also the end-line report. The end-line report means we went back to the community to check whether or not things have changed, what has changed and what is new, what has not been very relevant. That was another trip, which was basically similar to the first baseline study. So this one was an end-line study that was done, and then the report is also out there, is ready. So I'm sorry I have taken quite a long time presenting to you this. I want to thank you all in working with us, this journey that took us more than 3 years, and now we have come to the end of it, but I wouldn't say this is an end of it. There are so many publications that we will be producing out of this. And for C1 also, it has been a high opener. It has contributed quite a lot to the Center of Excellence for Preventing and Countering Violent Extremism, which is based in Djibouti. So I thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof, for a very concise presentation. We are running out of time, so I will directly take you to Dr. Trofena's presentation. Go ahead, please.
I want to thank you once more, all of you, for coming to listen to us and dialogue with us about the research that Professor Sunday has taken us through. He has taken us through the research journey. I cannot add anything else to that. Next slide. The main research question was, to what extent were the mechanisms for preventing and countering violent extremism in the IGAD region inclusive, youth inclusive? And to answer this big question, we broke it down into 4 objectives. The first objective focused on the drivers of violent extremism, because we realized that other researchers, from the literature review, we realized that other researchers that we had come across had oversimplified the drivers of violent extremism and categorized them either into religious factors or economic factors or others. But for us, we were interested in unpacking these drivers so that we see the interconnectedness of the drivers of violent extremism. The second objective was looking at the interventions by the state and non-state actors. There are various interventions that have been put in place since violent extremism was declared a global disaster. And these have been done by the various governments and non-state actors. Non-state actors include civil society organizations, youth-led organizations. We have the private practitioners who are all working towards preventing and countering violent extremism. And then we looked at the enabling environment. While this is happening, what are the policies, strategies, and programs or practices in place that are supporting prevention and countering of violent extremism? And finally, we were interested in documenting what has worked, what has not worked, and why. Because in most cases, you find that whenever we are faced with such a disaster, we focus mainly on the negatives. But there are also some positive things going on there. For example, not all youth are involved in violent extremism. There are some youth who are actually youth ambassadors, like the ones we have interacted with and are presently listening to me. We have worked with them and we have seen the marvelous works that they are doing to prevent, to de-radicalize fellow youth, to support communities that are affected and the families that are affected. Next slide. The research areas, as Professor Sunday has taken us through, were in Kenya, we had Nairobi, Garissa, and Mombasa. In Uganda, we had Gulu, Mayuge, and Kampala. He has given us the details of those areas. Now, the reason why Kenya was chosen and Uganda of the IGAD countries is the United Nations Security Council has labeled Kenya as a country that is highly volatile, just next to Somali. And then Uganda is dormant. Anything can happen anytime. And also they are the ones that gave the governments of Kenya and Uganda welcomed us when we asked them to support us in doing this research. Thank you. Next slide. The methodology that we adopted, we borrowed it from agriculture. It is a methodology that is usually used in agriculture. So we borrowed it from there and brought it into social science, the community-based participatory appraisal research. This is action research, which brings all the stakeholders on board from the beginning up to the end. Everybody who is participating, whether you are the researcher or the respondent, you are highly valued. Anybody who gives us any form of support is highly valued. And this is, we embraced this methodology and it has borne a lot of fruits. It is a bottom-up approach whereby we localized violent extremism. We took it to the people, to the local communities, and asked the communities to define violent extremism in their own language. Many of them did not even know what it is. They thought that, like in Uganda, they were saying, Violent extremism is found in Kenya or in Boko Haram in West Africa. But now when we explained to them what violent extremism is, they saw, they started telling us, yes, in our area here, we have seen youth who have a very strong stand against others. Even it might be political, it might be religious, it might be anything that makes them anything that makes them hate others. And they gave us various examples. So it is a bottom-up, top-down approach. We look at this community-based participatory appraisal research was looking at both the micro level, which is the individual, household, and community level, and going up to the vertically to the national level and then regional level. So all those who participated in this research have amplified the voices of the voiceless, because from the village up to IGAD, up to the African Union and elsewhere, where the findings of this research will go. So it is both horizontal and vertical analysis of PCVE that is multi-layered, multi-sectoral, and gender responsive. We also used a comparative approach, whereby we were comparing what is happening in Kenya and Uganda across countries and within the countries, because context matters. That is something we found that is very, very key. So this research aimed at understanding the complexity. It aimed at understanding the complexity and uncertainty of youth lives and experiences in different contexts that drive them into violent extremism or make them refrain from extremism. Next. The key findings were various. This research project has contributed to a body of knowledge that moves beyond simplistic one-dimensional proposition to explore youth violence and focused on a range of interrelated factors that drive youth into violent extremism. It is not just poverty, neither is it unemployment, nor is it religious factors. All these factors are interconnected like a spider web. And context matters. What bothers the youth in Mayuge is not the same thing that bothers the ones in Gulu. They may be similar, but the degrees also matter. What bothers the youth in Nairobi may be similar or different from what bothers the youth of Mombasa, because their contexts, the overriding factors under which they operate are quite different. We also found out that the state interventions have been put in place, and there are very many, but then they are less impactful than non-state interventions. What I mean by this is the many policies and interventions, even money grants that have gone into supporting the youth, but they have not had as much impact as civil society organization activities, because the civil society organization activities are well organized, well supervised, compared to the state interventions that are broad and are interfered with factors like corruption, ethnicity, religious profiling, and many other interferences. The lack of implementation of the government policy. We also found out that community-based participatory approach is the most effective in PCVE, as I have explained earlier, because it brings the community together. They own the problem and work on it together as a community. Next. Next slide. We also found, back please, we also found out that passive violent extremists exist, and these are the most lethal. They are the ones that fund the fires. They fund the activities. They are sympathizers. They are also catalysts. So not everybody, not all extremists are violent and active out there. We also have the passive violent extremists. We also found out that the upsurge of women involvement in PCVE is critical, as I will explain later on. There is an upsurge of women involvement in violent extremism, and also they are also involved as peace keepers. We have seen even in our own region here in the IGAD region what is happening with women, like what we had in Sudan recently, what we experienced in Uganda sometime back last year, whereby the youth, it was the female youth who were leading the others in fighting injustices fighting what they felt were injustices. Another finding we got was that the community police relationship is still wanting. It is still not good. In as much as interventions have been put in place, like in Kenya, we have the IPOA, an organization to do oversight for police. In Uganda, they also have an institution for watching the activities of the police. Still, this relationship is not good, and the youth feel that they are targeted. They feel that the police hate them. The police, and the local community leaders who are in charge or who inform the police treat them. In fact, they said in Mombasa, the elders are CCTV to us. They look at them like they're always looking for mistakes in youth instead of tapping into the great potential that the youth have. We also found that meaningful youth engagement in policy is a key ingredient to PCVE. When the youth are left out of matters that affect them, they become angry, they get frustrated, they do not want to be instructed. Youth want to be engaged as beneficiaries, as partners, and as leaders. They want to lead their own course. And they have new information and knowledge which they can inject into these policies. But when the policies are prepared elsewhere and then they're just given, it's like a prescription. A youth in Uganda told us that it is like when you go to hospital and you are given Panadol to take. You don't know even how it will affect your body, but you just take the medicine. So that is how the youth feel when the government does not involve them in the planning of the factors of matters that affect them. We found that education is the antidote to radicalization and violent extremism. How? Both formal and informal education is key. The formal curriculum should be, we should integrate peace and security in our curriculum, but be more specific and talk about violent extremism. We should train the teachers. We should provide the necessary infrastructure. Include disaster risk reduction education into the curriculum. And this can also be done informally in all the agents of socialization, like on media. We can have the dialogues on media. We can do capacity building during conferences in churches, in mosques, and even at funerals. We can talk about this and educate people. Not everybody is in school or in an institution, but we have other institutions where we can do this capacity building. We also found out that parental involvement in the children's lives is critical. In fact, due to non-involvement of parents into their children's life, these children lack direction from the beginning. They just grow up. They are not brought up. Now, because of this, now the children get lost. And when they find other people whom they think love them, then they join the wrong groups. So parental involvement is key. In Mombasa and in Gulu, Mombasa, Gulu, and Mayuge, this came out as a very major factor, whereby divorce rates are very high. The women are left with the children. Fathers have abandoned their children. Women who had left with the children struggle to fend for these children. And therefore, they do not even have time to attend to other issues other than providing them with shelter and food. And this is how the children become vulnerable, join gangs, and eventually get into violent extremism. Mental health emerged as a big threat, and many of these recruiters are cashing on it very much, because many issues contribute to mental health or mental stress. So, and it manifests itself in various ways. People who are suffering from mental health, we found out that many of them turn to drugs. Some of them commit suicide, and those who do not commit suicide are extremely violent. And in the process, the recruiters look at these vulnerable youth and use them to, they don't care. They have lost hope. They can explode themselves. They can do anything that they are told under the influence of drugs, or when their mental health strength, when their mental health is impaired. Another issue that needs to be considered is the plight of the returnees. Not that we call it the plight, because they are having a lot of problems. Most of them have a problem being reintegrated back into the community and being accepted into the community. In northern Uganda, we listen to very sad tales of those women who were abducted when they were children, 8, 9 years old. They have come back in miserable states with children born out of the abductions. They don't even know the fathers, and they have come back to the community. They have been resettled by the civil society organizations mainly, but then they want to live a normal life. They want to be accepted. They long for love, but instead the community treats them like they are always referred to wives of Kony, whom they really hate, whom they feel so bad about because of their condition. Some of them are even lame. Some have lost limbs, breasts, parts of their bodies. I can't even, let me just leave it there. Now, when we see in Mombasa, mainly in Kwale, Mombasa, we heard of cases whereby we have youth who have come back, but after some time they disappear. Up to now, their parents are strained. They are wondering what happened to them. This has caused a lot of anger in the community, and some of them go avenging or fighting the police, assuming that maybe it is the police. They don't even know who has abducted them again, but then they fight the government, thinking that maybe it is the government that has taken them in or killed them or jailed them without informing the families. And yet the Kenyan government has already declared amnesty for the returnees. So it is a challenge that is being looked at, and further research needs to be done in that area. We also find that the challenges of the male and female returnees are quite diverse and different. We found out that children are also engaged in violent extremism, and these youth who end up being violent extremists. They are incited from the time they were children, by starting from their family, from their community, and then as they grow up with that strong stand or that hatred, with the feelings of also revenging or hitting against others. Migration and violent extremism was established as also a factor. People migrate from one region to another to cause the terrorist acts or to get radicalized. So this is something which also needs to further interrogation for researchers and the policymakers to know. And because of this migratory character of violent extremism, regional integration is a key ingredient of PCVE. We found that is why the IGAD or the C1 who do early warning, we found that it is important to work with them, and they have supported our project very much. Next slide. This is how we see drivers of violent extremism to be. They are a spider web. They are interconnected. You find that, for example, on unemployment, we found out that youth are unemployed because even those who qualify, there is corruption that interferes. We find that even there are inequalities in maybe even education, the lack of government support. Some are unemployed because of poverty. Some are because of religious ideology. You may be learned, but then because of your culture, women are not expected to be working and such things. So there are many issues but all of them are interlinked, and you cannot break. You can't even put a finger on any one of them. Next. So how do we build resilience to youth radicalization to violent extremism? How do we build resilience? Because this is a problem that is with us. How do we navigate our way out of it, or learn to live with it, so that we reduce the number of youth who are getting radicalized and de-radicalize the others? We discourage others from getting into radicalization. First of all, the methodology of doing research and working with. We find that we are saying we should use a community-based participatory research approach, because it brings various partners on board. It helps to build an atmosphere of trust, respectful collaboration, and co-learning while working in different contexts across difference in culture, power, resources, and access to information. It also brings together community members and institutions to work as equal partners. In our research, there was no lesser partner. For example, even the civil society organization or an individual youth who came to our meeting, your views were valued just as that professor or that minister or the governor who also spoke in our events. So they help, everybody is an equal partner to identify, analyze, and address public peace and security concerns or issues affecting them at the individual, household, community, national, regional, and global levels. So it strengthens stakeholder engagement and partnerships between institutions and the community. And we can see, even this meeting is a testimony to that we started with all of you who are here with us today, and even the ones who are not able to join us. But we started with you, and we are continuing working together. We have strengthened our partnerships and engagements. We are stronger than what we were when we started. All participants are regarded as key and equal partners, and this approach has promoted community ownership of the research. Everybody feels, and I had one of the members, I think it was Anne, who said that she has benefited from this research and it has taught her a lot about policy engagement. Next. Next. Go back. Another strategy of building resilience is embracing the Ubuntu philosophy. The African philosophy of Ubuntu states that I am because we are. The Ubuntu philosophy refers to humanity towards others. It means a sense of belongingness, oneness, interconnectedness of life, tolerance towards others, hence cultural diversity, no prejudice, trust, love, peace, happiness, eternal optimism, and inner goodness. It is the guiding principle of human values and relating with others. Ubuntu is the core of human values, and without Ubuntu, mankind is enveloped by greed, selfishness, immorality, and pride. Ubuntu is essentially about togetherness and how all of our actions have an impact on others and on society. It is sharing our lives with others and caring for those around us. So Ubuntu is also about justice, fairness, and equality for all people, regardless of race, gender, or social status. There is no discrimination or exclusion. So what we are saying is, if we invoke the spirit of Ubuntu, then there'll be no discrimination. We shall foster social cohesion. We shall ensure there's social justice and inclusivity. The youth will not feel excluded. They will feel part and parcel of everything that is going on around them. Therefore, the anger that is in some of them, that makes some of them to get radicalized and want to hit their, become aggressors, to hit at others, will not be there. And we can use the human rights approach to PCVE, uphold our cultural and traditional values, and by implementing youth-friendly legal frameworks. Because we say violent extremism concerns and affects us all. So PCVE is for all of us. Well, we can also localize PCVE, use the community-based approach, adopt a gendered approach to PCVE programming and include women in peace building, provide space for youth and women to amplify the voices of the voiceless at the decision-making table, whereby we give equal opportunities for all people. We should reintegrate and rehabilitate returnees into the community without stigmatizing them. Another strategy is to meaningfully engage youth and youth-led organizations in matters that concern them so that they are beneficiaries, partners, and leaders. We should strengthen police and community relationships, promote interfaith dialogue, encourage youth into civic engagement, reject tribalism and clanism, and encourage parental involvement in children and youth lives. These are just some of the examples of how we can invoke Ubuntu, the togetherness, the oneness. I am because you are. Next. Another strategy for building resilience is gender-responsive PCVE programming. Now, there are several United Nations Security Council resolutions, especially Resolution 1325, Resolution 2242, the SDGs number 4, SDG number 5, number 8 on education, 5 is on SDG number 5, gender, 8 on education, 16 on peace and security, 17 on partnership. All this should be, they underscore the importance of including women and youth in peace and security as a precondition for harmony in the community. And therefore, all PCVE programs should engender, they should be engendered. We should do gender analysis. This fallacy that men make war and women make peace, or that women are passive and vulnerable during violence, whereas men are the aggressors, has been disapproved in this research. we found out that there's an upsurge of women engagement in terrorism, and they undertake the same roles as those undertaken by men as suicide bombers, as masterminds, informers, and recruiters. We found out that women, either mothers, wives, or girlfriends, push men into violent extremism by challenging their masculinity, asking them questions like, what kind of man are you? Fellow men are out there fending or fighting for their families. In both Kenya and Uganda, where land is a very emotive factor, we found in northern Uganda, a woman quipped, "Isn't there any man left in Acholi land to fight for our land? Did Kony go away with all the men in this land?" That is very inciting. So it will make the son or a husband walk out and go and now get into violence in the name of protecting land, and also because of his ego has been rubbed the wrong way. Women recruit fellow women or girls into violent extremism, for example, as Al-Shabaab brides. And we also were told stories about the female returnees in Uganda who told us that it is women, old women, who are welcoming them into the forest, where they were later on handed over to the soldiers. Experiences of male and female returnees differ, and therefore gender responsive PCVE programming is quite important, because many of these returnees, some of them backslide, they go back into violent extremism when they are not accepted in the community. Parental neglect should not only be pegged on men or women. It is the responsibility of both parents, and therefore gender programming is quite important here, and gender roles must be factored into PCVE programming, because both boys and girls who get radicalized maintain contact with their mothers. We found out that they always tell their parents where they are. After some time, they tell their mothers particularly where they are. Next. Hello, next. Finally, to build resilience, we adopt an all government and all community approach to PCVE programming. This is a case whereby we give it a holistic approach to PCVE programming that includes a broad spectrum of stakeholders. We have tested this and it has worked for us. It has given us positive results. So engage civil society organizations, the government, security actors, private practitioners, educators, community leaders, local leaders, policymakers, faith-based organizations, media, youth-led, women-led organizations, and all that in a bottom-up, top-down approach. Trust and communication should be the fabric of PCVE programming for inclusivity. Where there is no trust, there can never be harmony. There will be no social cohesion. When people treat each other with suspicion, when they don't feel comfortable in that space, then they will not be able to, the PCVE agenda will not move forward. Community policing should be embraced, whereby the police belong to the government, but then bring the community on board so that it is a joint venture. Next. Next slide. Another soft approach to PCVE programming is positive narratives. We realize that media has been condemned to be the one propagating violent extremism, but then it is a double-edged sword. It can also be used for giving alternative narratives. So the positive narratives, you can see from this slide that we have a youth, who both male and female youth, who are having all those drivers of violent extremism, mistrust, the quality of education, they are angry, they have identity crisis, the skill mismatch, so they can't get jobs, social inequalities, police brutality, all those problems are going on in their heads. And they are saying nothing about us without us. The only option is violence for recognition. We were told this by the youth in one of the places we went. And others were saying, give us space, we have great potential. Others were saying, listen to us. Don't just make us participate in your events, engage us. And therefore, we can change all this by coming up with the positive narrative, the alternative narrative to what is negative that is found, that the other person is talking about. Next slide. And again, I go back to the all government, all community engagement, whereby you will see every sector of the community here is important. The leadership, the community, the media, the government, and the CSOs. Each one of them is asking questions. When we answer these questions, then we shall build community resilience. And this can be done on local radio. It can be done in our churches. When during that time when we say we have notices, we can write something and put it on our mosques at the entrance, so that everybody can look at it and get to know what is going on in the community. Next. Finally is the formal and informal education, which I had already which I had already talked about. And in this formal and informal education, we have to emphasize the soft skills, the skills of negotiation, critical thinking, problem solving, leadership. They need to know, please go back, they need to know what has to be done right. They should build competencies. We realize that there is a lot of knowledge about violent extremism, but not the competencies. What are the skills that we need for PCVE? And then we need to support the vulnerable youth at risk of radicalization. There are many programs that have come up out there of different measures. Some are even given grand startup capital and all that. Work with the public sector, that is the schools, the churches, mosques, and the right. Disrupt terrorism, build cohesive communities, dialogue, and implement the legislation. This legislation that starts from the global level up to the local level. Next. What did we learn? We learned that violent extreme in PCVE programming, there are things that worked and others did not work. I will start with the negative. What did not work is ethnic and religious profiling of youth and their communities, the slow action by security actors when alerted of radicalization or terrorism, non-involvement of youth in policy making, use of hard security approaches to CVE or the countering and violent extremism. That is where the police come in and clobber people. Stigmatization and mistrust against returnees, weak state and non-state partnership, exclusion of youth in matters that concern them. What has worked and needs to be scaled up, or we are recommending should be scaled up, is the gendered approaches in PCVE engagement of youth and women in peace building. Youth and women peace ambassadors, like the ones in this workshop today. Interfaith dialogue workshops. We found out that we have several of that, especially in Mombasa and Garissa. And in Garissa, we even found there's a mosque in a church, in a Catholic church in Garissa. Then the CSOs and the non-actors resettling returnees and reintegrating them in the community and giving them technical skills. We have seen so much of these in areas that have been affected. We have also seen what is working also is the community policing in Uganda and Kenya. In Kenya, we even have Nyumba Kumi initiative. We also have the Mulika app, whereby in case somebody comes across or hears an event, a security event, they post it on that app and the government takes action. Then another positive thing is strengthen partnerships among and between all stakeholders. Next slide. We asked a question from in the baseline and even during the capacity building sessions that we had during the Learning Alliance and at the end, during the end line. The question was, whom do you want to become in the midst of violent extremism? During the baseline, most of the youth were saying that, and we have called that the vulnerability zone, that they were saying that they were ready to spread, they were vulnerable and therefore they spread anger, fear, and emotions. They complain about the government and the community. They are erratic. They spread violent messages. But during the transition zone, when we were conducting the capacity building and during the Learning Alliance, they formed partnerships. There was development of programs, policies, structures to support and engage the youth, and the capacity building of the youth strengthened even their own communities. Now, at the end, during the end line, we came across positive things that were an indicator that now the youth are becoming resilient to violent extremism. We do not attribute all this to our work. We know that there are other activities that these youth are also engaged in, but they were giving us positive stories, like they now have built soft skills like self-initiative, critical thinking, leadership, negotiation, teamwork, problem solving, self-efficacy. They are confident in themselves. They make use of the talents that they have. They have increased their agency. They can speak up. They even know how to approach the policymakers. There is social cohesion. They work together, not in competition. The youth leaders are the peace ambassadors, and they go out there on radio to encourage fellow youth not to engage in violence. They are engaged in civic. We have youth-led civic engagement, whereby they are doing social accountability in their communities. They have developed community scorecards, and they are rating their governments, how they are performing, and they have generally built community resilience. Thank you very much for listening to me. I want to just thank you for all those who have contributed to the production of this report. Thank you. And my partners, C1, IGAD, PeaceNet, we thank you very much. I thank the IDRC for giving us the grant. I really thank you, the participants, all the stakeholders, the governments of Uganda and Kenya, for what you have enabled us to do. So back to you, Mr. Lemu.
Thank you, Dr. Tufena. That was a very, very elaborate presentation. We have run out of time, but I have asked people to stay. Dr. Tufena, that was a very, very elaborate presentation. We have run out of time, but I have asked people to stay with us for another 30 minutes. So we'll open the floor for discussion. Any questions, comments, feedbacks from the participants is welcome. Prof will take the floor and will moderate the session for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alemo. Thank you for handing over this important session to me. And I'm very sure that we were like 35, now we're 29. And those who have remained, I'm very sure you might be having some questions for Tufena and maybe for me and Alemo or anybody else, and also for IGAD, C1. I'm sure Tiki is probably still there. So if this is a time for you to ask questions for clarification and maybe also add your voice into what has been done in the course of 3 years. So over to you, colleagues, participants. Please raise your hand so that I'm able to see you. And if you have a question, address it very shortly. precisely, to the point, and to whom you want these questions answered. So the floor is yours.
Selina.
I'm not seeing any hand. Selina,
Sorry.
Go ahead, Selina.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Sande and Trofena, for a very elaborate presentation. I would say that it captured most of the ideas and things that we actually looked at. But maybe I would want to have two recommendations, or maybe just an input. One is the issue of the TOT. We know that we did the trainer of trainers for the youth, and I think it was like almost a whole week, but we needed to know the sustainability of that program, because you're saying that you're coming to the end of the research. I can see that it was very elaborate, especially on the recommendations. And I want to know if it's possible for us to continue with the TOT on the youth inclusivity. How sustainable is this? Are we able to get more recommendations on what we felt during the TOT training? Secondly, I know that Trofena has elaborated and cited that actually the strategies and interventions of governments are not very impactful. But if we work together with the CSOs and the people who are doing PCVE on the ground, then we'll be able to maybe make it more, get a greater impact for what we have as strategies. Because when you look at the Kenyan government, we already have the CVE strategy, and most counties already have demonstrated and they have their strategies at the county level. So now that you have done this research, I would also wish to know maybe elaborately how we can well coordinate then the youth inclusivity in all this, so that we are able to speak to them in the voice that they understand, and be able to work together with them to be able to reduce violence, extremism, especially in our country, and the counties that have been labeled red: Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, and Mombasa. So giving this, I think if we can get how well we can support the project and the strategies that the countries have put in place, and issues of also the sustainability of TOT. I think Trofena has really elaborated so well. I like the findings, and I think if we look at it, and maybe as a country and maybe as a region, and see one in totality, we can be able to get programming for this and be able to work together, because we realize that the violence extremism is running across our region and has become a very it's an emerging issue that is affecting everything. And I like also the part that Trofena is telling us that we do not have to put it on one driver, that it has it's like a web, and we also need to now to work with it and see how well can we then be able to counter it and be able to do the positive narration that she actually mentioned. Thank you very much, Dr. Sande and Dr. Trofena. That was a well elaborated presentation that you have for us that also captured actually what is happening in our countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Selina. Let me take three questions and comments, then we will go to the answers. I can see Aurelia. Aurelia?
Yes, good afternoon. I'd like to thank you for the very elaborate, very informative and rich information and all that on regarding violent extremism. Mine is more of a comment rather than a question. Seeing that the COVID-19 pandemic has really affected the youth space, actually all spaces in general, I'd like to see like the nexus between COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19 and how it has affected youth, especially in the violent PCVE space. Like how has the dynamics shifted? I think that's a very important pointer going forward so that we can know the way forward. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Aurelia. You're bringing in a new dimension to this, and this is the reality we're in. I don't know if Trofena will have an answer to this because COVID-19 came towards the tail of the research, but we are living in a reality today. So this is a very important question. I'm sure IDRC is also listening to this. It looks like this question is a continuation of what we have done into the new dimension of COVID-19, if there is need to continue with this research. Let me take the next question. Anybody with a question, please.
Yes, I would like to. Can I pose a question?
Yes, Georgia.
Yes. Okay, first, I would like to know if your research and your findings have addressed violent extremism by associating it with radicalization and terrorism, or if there is any difference through which we should think about preventing and countering violent extremism. I mean, is there any specific difference, or you have just addressed violent extremism through also radicalization? Because through the literature, I noticed that some groups, some teams make an important difference. This is the first question. The second question is if there is any example of holistic approach that has already been started and is maybe functioning well already in Kenya and Uganda, that we can look at and see how the mechanisms were put in place. Thank you very much, and thanks for the two wonderful presentations.
Thank you, Georgia. I think let's go to Trofena. Most of the questions are to you, Trofena. And also, maybe if there is anybody later who thinks that can contribute to the answers, is welcome.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I wanted to take 3 questions.
There is Jerome also.
Yes, Tigis. I wanted to take 3 questions and then go to the next round. Is that okay?
Mine is not a question. I thought it would be more appropriate for me to come in at this stage. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, mine is just to really thank Trofena, the team, and yourself, Sunday, for the very succinct presentation that was made, which really captured, I'm sure, all of our interests. I think what has emerged is extremely insightful, and maybe a lesson for us as well, that we need to maybe desist from making anecdotal conclusions in terms of what drives violent extremism in the region, and also make sure that we pay attention to specific country contexts when looking at violent extremism. So I think it was very valuable, and I like the fact that the young lady Orella raised this issue of COVID. I think maybe Trofena is likely to maybe address that question. It was one of the things I wanted to raise as well, because this pandemic has kind of flipped everything around. It has really disrupted the momentum of initiatives and the whole functioning of our region and the livelihood of people. So I think it may be pertinent at this point, when the outcome is being packaged for further dissemination. It has some kind of preface, maybe considering developments related to COVID-19, and reflecting on the same, and how the recommendations and conclusions that I've already stated, will they remain the same? Or, for example, in terms of initiating response projects, how do you see, relying on support from partners going forward? Because in our sector, one of the challenges that we're anticipating is that maybe funds are likely to dry from outside, and peace-building initiatives and their sustainability will be impacted. So mine was just to really appreciate the depth and really robust nature of the research output, to thank OSSREA and the partners, and maybe make this comment in terms of the uncertainties we find ourselves in. Thank you.
Thank you, Tigist, for these wonderful comments. I hope you are going to stay until the end of the questions and answers, so that we pick what is necessary for IGAD and C1 as well, and enrich our understanding within C1. Now, back to you, Trofena. There were 3 key questions. Before I come to you, Jerome, I will go to the second round of the questions, but let Trofena answer these 3 questions, one from Selina Actually, Selina raised 2 questions, Aurelia raised 1, and then Georgia raised 2 questions. Trofina.
Thank you very much for yet another opportunity to clarify a few of the issues that are coming up from my presentation. The train of trainers, the sustainability of the train of trainers, our approach was that by us engaging the policymakers, which is the governments, and civil society organizations, and training them and developing a manual together with them in a participatory manner was already a way of ensuring sustainability. So we expect that the various governments, the various civil society organizations, faith-based organizations, or youth-led organizations that worked with us will use that manual and modify it to suit their own contexts and use it for as a sustainable entity. And we feel, since we worked with these communities from the beginning to the end, it's also a way of sustainability because the trust has already been established. But you can come back to us at OSSREA and work with us through this, because we have developed the manual, we have done the research, we have been with these communities for 3.5 years, and therefore moving forward, the various governments can engage us. The idea of interventions, how can we coordinate the interventions and strengthen partnerships with civil society organizations? For us, in this, we said we had an innovative methodology whereby we brought on board 3 partners, signed MOUs with them. We used the action research where everybody is valued. We had an inception meeting and told them, we know you are working on these areas. We don't know everything. We want to partner and work with you. When you are valuing others and working with them, and that you try and maintain that the value that you have attached on everybody in your team, and you will always emerge as a victor. So I will encourage the governments, because the civil society organizations usually say it is us versus you. The academia always, the governments always say you are prescribing to us instructions. So we have learned over time and come up with action research where we bring people on board, work with them from the beginning to the end. We harness on the synergies of each other. The second question from Tigist and Aurelia on COVID and if these recommendations will still hold. We believe the recommendations will still hold because it's community-based participatory appraisal. There is, you have to adopt developmental research and evaluation. In developmental research is whereby we are continuously revising our methodology. When we are in the field, depending on the context, we respond according to the needs of that particular context, and we move on. COVID has actually affected us, but we are lucky. We have received another grant from IDRC for 3 years, and we are still using this same platform. We are still going to the same areas and working with the same youth groups to research on how COVID has impacted on our society and how we are going to rebuild better afterwards. Our next research, which is commencing on 1st of September, is called COVID and the Youth Question in Africa. We are piloting we want to pilot again our interventions, and we are still going to work with C1 IGAD as a partner we really value and love. We have other civil society organizations that we are working with. We are doing civic engagement. Now, what we are going to do is to engage, the youth are going to be engaged in civic engagement, where the social accountability, they will now put the local leaders on fire, their feet in fire, ask them questions about how the monies and the budgets for COVID have been spent, and many other things therein. We shall roll it out on 1st of September. For Kadosi, you asked if we did violent extremism and other violences. Ours was just, we just concentrated on violent extremism. We know that there are other various conflicts or areas where the youth are engaged, like gangs and activities like that, but we steered away from that and just concentrated on violent extremism and radicalization. Thank you.
Tofina, there was another question of from Georgia that if there is an example of any holistic approach that has started that you know of based on this research recommendation, if there is an example of this holistic approach which exists as of now.
The examples of the holistic approach, ours was the pilot. And in areas where we went and explained how we are doing our business, we believe that the partners that we have worked with are going to do the same.
Yeah.
A case whereby we are having, because it is complex, for example, civil society organizations, they are doing so much out there, but for them, they do not have the convening power to bring academia, media, a regional organization like C1 on board. So I am yet to hear about one that is doing this.
Thank you. Thank you, Tofina. Let us go to the second round of questions. I don't know how much time we have. Alem will have to guide me on this. Jerome, are you still there? Mr. Jerome, please go ahead.
Prof, we have asked participants to stay for another 10 minutes or 11 minutes, up to 1:30, okay, maybe.
Okay, so we can go on to the next round of questions. Go ahead, Jerome.
Thank you so much for the presentation, your presentation, and Dr. Tofina. For some of us young in academia, first of all, my name is Jerome. I teach anthropology at the university. We learn not only how to do things, but also how to present. This was excellent to see the process of the entire project, right from the proposal work to what we did and the findings and how all that was condensed for us to see. I mean, I feel resisting everything, and I feel like all the voices are presented. So thank you so much for that elaborate presentation. And I'm also asking the question. I know projects run on time and they end, but our partners like Action Research, the people involved, the people on the ground, is there a way we can develop a small tool for them to see what we ask and what the researchers, the academia, the government finally, is there a way we can condense this research to be meaningful to the local people in a small kind of work? Like those who can read, the people really chiefs or community leaders who would want to know what were our findings, how do we do it? Because right within the process of gathering data, we were counseling people. People were speaking their voices, their stories. We raised the hope. And while the project has ended, I would ask that if OSSREA can continue engaging partners to disseminate this information beyond just policy level, the level where we're like, okay, these same communities here. Remember, we came here that time, yes. We asked about this question, yes. Not only this community, all over the world. So we have this small booklet of 5-page or 2-page or 3-page talking about what you gave us and engaging it. So the conversation and the dialogue about youth and preventing violent extremism can continue in a small and a mannered way, because now this is academia, you have this academic document, a policy document, but since it's action, we can have some little small booklet or handout, we can engage with the people to commence the discussion. So I'm very honored, I feel very happy about what is taking place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jerome. This is in the heart of what Trofena presented about ownership, and I think she'll answer that question very well. I would have answered that, but I think Trofena is the right person to deal with that. This issue of ownership and taking it back to the community to use what we have done. I'm very sure we have hundreds of those products that we have done. Anybody with another question? Trofena, you prepare your answer to that. Yes, Sister Otieno, please, go ahead.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation and the hard work and the journey you've gone through. Mine is just to point out that we've seen that women, girls, and youth are in it, and they are the majority who are the marginalized in community, and you can see they are actively involved in violent extremism. So in that case, I was just asking, maybe we can ask ourselves whether the members of IGAD have all adopted the UNHRC 1325, and can we interrogate the national action plans for these countries if they are working towards lifting women, girls, and youth from what the document is talking about, what the instrument is talking about? Because if we continue ignoring women, and COVID has exposed it, the way the violence has, the domestic violence has been, and the teenage pregnancies and all that, it means the countries of IGAD and the world must look at 1325 seriously, and their action plans must be action-oriented. Otherwise, the gains we've gotten will not be there anymore. The women, the girls, and the youth must be put on board, and they must be involved in the day-to-day activities. Otherwise, with the power of a mother, you know, they are the socializers of the community. With that power they have and what they have done, I feel that we are preparing for disaster in future. We must bring them on board as soon as possible so that we hear them, they work. And if we empower a woman, youth, or a girl, it is the entire community. So we reduce violence at home. We recognize this through the national action plans, which, if you look at them, most of them don't say much, but let them be used effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Grete. I think this is a very important question. We might also need the help of Tigist here to reflect on these IGAD member states if they have adopted the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 in the IGAD region in linkages with what Trofena, C1, and PeaceNet have done. So I think the answers could come from both Trofena and Tigist. I would also add on to that, but I would want them first to answer that question. Any other questions?
Just a minute. And yeah. We should take advantage of Kenya being a member of the of the Security Council for the next 2 years. Let us take advantage of that and have it done. And let us look at the national security action plans with a tooth comb, because they are not doing what we expected them to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Any other question, please? So we are running out of time.
We have one hand, two hands.
Yes, Daniel.
Can I pose the last one?
Yes.
Hello.
Daniel.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Professor Sande and Dr. Mukuna. My inquiry is that since we are coming to the end of this project, does OSSREA have a framework where we can continue updating on maybe monthly or quarterly basis on activities that are done by some stakeholders on violent extremism, but also on case-by-case issues that are happening within our region? Is there something that that can help us really move and have shared visions about what is happening?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel. This is a question about broadening the framework that can allow people to continue engaging in activities that OSSREA has started. I think, Trofena, you have answers to that. I'm sure you have the answers. I know you have it. So that is a question for you. There was another voice coming in. Somebody wanted to talk.
I wanted to pose a question. Can I?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you. I would like to know if the final report of the research is available, and concerning the holistic approach and the fact that you have conducted a pilot project on that, I wonder if the factors and drivers that affect the youth engagement in violent extremism can also affect the holistic approach, and if we can learn some lesson from your pilot project in the end report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Georgia. Trofena, back to you.
I realize I have 1 minute. I don't know how to do that, but then thank you, Jerome, for suggesting about the book. We have very many documents which we have developed, which when we have been having workshops, we have been disseminating during the workshops. They are online. If you go to our OSSREA website, www.osrea.net, and you check on the PCVE window, you will find them there. Although the community members may not come to the website, so we will take the hard copies of these documents again to them when we finish. The issue on the Security Council by Dr. Merigoretti is a good one. What we have done ourselves is to flag it out, and there is a paper that I have developed on the gendered approach to PCV programming that is being edited, where I've recommended highly I've given that recommendation that you are giving, that the IGAD countries should do this and ensure that CBE programming is engendered. The third one is the YOVEX activity platform. Daniel, we have a virtual WhatsApp group, but then it is graduating into youth and violent extremism virtual platform called YOVEX virtual platform. So you will be posting on this so that we continue interacting even after this. So all of you would like you to write to us and give us your emails, but for you to be in this meeting today, we have your email. So we will send out the platform when it is open, so that we get, and it will be specifically for just posting relevant information, not other things like adverts about somebody's business. The fourth one, the final report will be ready on the 30th of this month. of August. It is being edited right now. So it will be ready and we shall post to you, Kadosi. It will be posted to the IDRC. It's an open document like the one that I've posted with from my presentation you have seen. I've given the report, the Kenyan report is out there. So the rest will also be posted, and they are free online. They are on an open online platform, not restricted. So all the documents are open for everybody to use and see.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. I think we are running out of time. Just to add on to Mary Grotti, there is a policy brief which I mentioned is coming in, and one of the recommendations is actually to embrace gender dimension into, actually to put it together, look at the policy dimensions from the global. If you read the books that we are producing, Professor has produced one already and mine is coming out, the issue of gender was asked, should cut across from the beginning up to the end, and we did that. So in the policy brief that is coming at the end of the month, one of the recommendations is actually to deploy the UN Security Council 1325 plus other subsequent resolutions of the UN, and also those that have been nationalized in different countries of the IGAD. So unfortunately, we recommended 2 countries where the studies have been done, but basically we would love if IGAD would also have all these at their disposal. Tigis, do you have anything on this UN Security Council 1325 if IGAD member states have adopted?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, mine is just maybe a quick one. I think Sunday also knows that IGAD has quite a robust gender desk based at Djibouti, and I think they've been doing a lot of good work in terms of lobbying with member states in fulfilling their international commitments regarding women and peace and security, which the UN Security Council resolution and other subsequent resolutions are key. I know there was a ministerial meeting that was held in December in Uganda, where specifically ministers in charge of gender from the IGAD member states were asked to present progress in terms of their national action plans on the rollout of this important resolution. I think most of you know that at least 4 countries, including those the research covered, Uganda, Kenya, also South Sudan and Djibouti, have national action plans. But as of December 2019, the remaining 3 countries are yet to develop these national action plans. So I think in general, we agree that there's a lot of rhetorical commitment from all member states. I can say this as a woman. I know this is not politically correct, but countries understand at a policy level that women are critical stakeholders in peace and security issues, but in terms of concrete progress on the ground on women partaking in these activities meaningfully, I think there's a lot more that needs to be done. So what I could do perhaps is locate this ministerial communique of December 2019 that was held in Entebbe, which I mentioned. Maybe share it with Alamu to share it with the group who is participating here to further interrogate it. So in short, 4 countries have national action plans, the rest don't, and there is recognition that in terms of implementation, there is a lot more that needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tigis. Thank you, Tigis. You might also want to know that South Sudan is leading in the implementation of 1325 with, they have almost achieved their 35% of women representation in parliament. They have almost achieved. They're in 30%. They are ahead of all the other IGAD member states. So those could be some background that you might want to know. Okay, I think we are running out of time. Alemu, is there anything IGAD member states? So those could be some background that you might want to know. Okay, I think we are running out of time. Alemu, is there anything? Yes, please. I want to hand it over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof, for moderating this session. I think we had a very wonderful webinar, very informative and very lively. We'll share all the reports, presentations, policy briefs, and other relevant documents on our website. You can go to OSSREA.net, and there is a window, PCVE window. You will find all the presentations, reports, and policy briefs and other documents there. This webinar is also being recorded, and we'll edit it, and it will be posted on OSSREA's YouTube channel. We also have a very active WhatsApp group, which we have been using for learning from one another from the 3 research sites in the 2 countries. We also share on that platform. Thank you all, and I wish you all the best. We really have a very wonderful webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Hope to see you.
Thanks.
Thank you.